Over 100 public sector human resource directors and managers were in attendance for that conference. Mr. Jones says it was one of several activities in which the ministry has engaged in. Also in attendance this morning is Mr. Clyde Harrison. He's the Executive Director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, and Major General Stuart Saunders, a Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security. Now, the Minister, Information Minister, that is Sandra Faulkner, has entered the building, and so we will let you go over to this morning's proceedings.
Minister. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Jamaica House media briefing. It is Wednesday, the 9th of October, 2013. Welcome to our viewers on PBCJ and to those joining us on the World Wide Web as we bring you this live news conference from Jamaica House. I'm Lincoln Robinson. Our weekly briefing, as always, takes a look at some of the issues coming out of Cabinet, and our Minister of Information, the Honourable Sandra Faulkner, will be updating us on some of those decisions in a while. And I'm very pleased also this morning to welcome our special guest. Minister is flanked by all men this morning. Wow. We have from the far left the CEO of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, Mr. Clyde Harrison. Next to Clyde is the Deputy Financial Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Mr. Wayne Jones. And to my left is Major General Stuart Saunders, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security. Welcome, gentlemen, to our briefing. Okay, let's now turn things over to Minister Faulkner for some of the decisions coming out of Cabinet.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to our viewers on PBCJ and those on the World Wide Web. Cabinet has approved amendments to the Registration Strata Titles Act and approved its tabling in Parliament. The amendments will strengthen the ability of the strata corporations to endorse the payment of maintenance charges. In 2009, the Act was amended primarily to improve the ability of strata corporations to manage, control, and administer common property and resolve disputes. Since then, the provision requiring strata corporation to first obtain vacant possession of the property before it is able to exercise the power of sale has caused problems. It has hindered rather than advanced the new enforcement provisions of the Act to allow strata corporations to effectively manage common property. The amendment will remove the problematic section and make a new provision to allow for the production of a duplicate certificate of title for the purchaser if the strata corporation has exercised its power of sale. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Finance and Planning, the Honorable Horace Daly, gave an update on the status of public sector heads of agreement for the 2012 to 2015 contract period. You may recall that as a prior action to secure the extended fund facility with the IMF, a 3-year heads of agreement was signed between the government and several bargaining units represented by the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions and other staff associations. 85% of public sector bargaining units, including the Jamaica Teachers Association, have signed the agreement. The government is honoring the obligations made under these agreements. Wayne Jones, Deputy Financial Secretary, is here and he will answer any questions you may have on the status. Cabinet has approved recommendations in connection with the lighting of the Elegant Corridor in Montego Bay between the airport roundabout and the Iberia Star Hotel. There has been safety concerns for some time due to speeding, the absence of street lights, poor nighttime visibility, and an increased number of road accidents. The recommendations include the option of having bidders submit proposals for either grid-powered or solar-powered LED street lights. The bidders for the solar option will be asked to submit indicative costs for operation and the maintenance for a period of 5 years. Each solution has advantages and disadvantages. With the grid solution, JPSCO would deal with the maintenance-related issues. However, it will attract electricity and other maintenance charges. For the solar solution, there would be no recurring electricity cost. However, ownership and maintenance would be a challenge, as the JPSCO would not be willing to assume this responsibility. The decisions on the option to be used will be made after analysis of the tenders received. The funds for the project will be provided by the Tourism Enhancement Fund, and the National Works Agency will oversee the implementation. And we have with us the Executive Director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, and he will be able to answer any questions that you may have. Cabinet has approved the establishment of Board of Visitors and the appointment of their members for juvenile correctional and remand centers. The juvenile boards of visitors are being established to monitor the operations of juvenile centers within the Department of Correctional Services. Their functions will include observance and assessment of diet, health, maintenance, conditions of detention, and other matters relating to their safety, to the safety and well-being of the children in the centers. Each board must have a registered medical practitioner, an attorney at law with at least 5 years experience, and a psychologist. The chairpersons are as follows. For the Metcalf Street Juvenile Center, Dr. Abigail Harrison. For the South Camp Juvenile Correctional and Remand Center, Dr. Gladys Hyatt. For the Rio Cobre Juvenile Correctional Center, Mrs. Moffat Townsend, and for Hilltop Juvenile Correctional Center, Mr. Franklin Moody. Each board will have to submit reports to the Children's Advocate, the Superintendent of the institution, the Commissioner of Corrections, and the Minister of National Security, and the boards will meet once per month. Cabinet has approved the award of a contract to Illumina Jamaica in the sum of $689,739 for the supply of 180 interactive whiteboards for schools in the e-learning project. E-Learning Jamaica was incorporated in July 2005 and is funded through the Universal Service Fund. The main objective is to facilitate web-based learning, computer-based learning, and virtual classrooms utilizing information and communication technology. Operating in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, the e-learning project targets students at the secondary level with the applications and processes of an electronic nature geared towards improvement of performance in the CXE and CSEC examinations. The interactive whiteboards technology is used to enhance classroom lesson presentation by making them more engaging. The contract is for the delivery and installation of the boards, as well as the training of teachers in the use and care of the fixed electronic whiteboard system, and that contract is for 6 months. Cabinet has approved the award of a contract to Surrey Paving and Aggregate Company Limited in the sum of $21,467,611 for the design and construction of sewage conveyance facilities under the Portmore sewage system. The key works under the project include construction of facilities to transfer sewage discharged into each of the existing 5 sewage treatment plants at Independence City, Bridgeport, Hamilton Gardens, Portmore Villas, and Caymanas to Soapberry. Provision of a standby generator at each pump station, construction of an administration building to operate and monitor the key operations, and the decommissioning of the 5 existing sewage treatment plants and the restoration of each site to acceptable conditions. 95% of the Portmore population is connected to the NWC's sewage infrastructure, and the 5 existing treatment plants are in an advanced state of disrepair. The contract is for 45 months and is funded from the National Water Commission's K-Factor stream of funds. Cabinet has approved a contract to Oshkosh Corporation of the United States in the sum of $1,454,000 US for the manufacture and delivery of one aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle and associated equipment, rescue equipment. Under the rules of the International Civil Aviation Organization, the Norman Manley International Airport is to operate 3 aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicles to meet the airport's rescue and firefighting capability. Financing for the project is provided from the Norman Manley International Airport's budgetary allocation for the 2013 to 2014 fiscal year. Cabinet has approved travel for the Honorable Lisa Hanna, Minister of Youth and Culture, to participate in a United Nations panel discussion on regional cooperation for the protection of children from violence. The panel discussion is taking place within the framework of the UN General Assembly Third Committee debate on the rights of the child. Last year, Jamaica hosted the UN Regional Consultation on Violence Against Children, and the upcoming panel discussion is a follow-up to the Jamaica meeting. It will assess the progress of the work agreed at that meeting and the follow-up actions to protect our children from violence. Minister Hanna will be making a statement at the plenary of the panel discussion. The Minister will be accompanied by Mrs. Sadie Keating, Consultant and Advisor on Children's Affairs, and Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, Acting CEO of the Child Development Agency. While in New York, Minister Hanna will also visit the Lincoln Center and will hold discussions with other cultural officials of New York. Minister Hanna received a recent visit from the management of the Lincoln Center with a proposal to establish a center in Jamaica for the Caribbean. Cabinet has approved a ministerial mission led by the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, the Honorable Anthony Hilton, to Canada. The mission, which is currently underway, will engage Canadian investors and promote investment opportunities in Jamaica, in particular the logistics hub. They will also meet with potential distributors of Jamaican goods in the Canadian market. Mr. Hilton will also use the opportunity to meet with members of the Jamaica diaspora to address issues related to Jamaica's growth agenda and update them on investment and other possibilities in Jamaica. Canada represents an important and strategic market for investment and trade. Canada is Jamaica's second largest trading partner. The mission will visit Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal and Halifax. The Minister is accompanied by Dr. Eric Deans, Chairman of the Jamaica Logistics Task Force, and Ms. Diana Edwards, President of JAMPRO, and the delegation returns to the island on Saturday. Cabinet has approved an official funeral for the Mayor of Portmore, George Lee. Mayor Lee died on September 29, 2013, after a brief illness. The official funeral for Mayor Lee will take place at the Power of Faith Ministries in Portmore on Thursday, October 17 at 11 a.m. Mayor Lee was serving his second stint as Mayor of Portmore, having also served as Councillor for the Greater Portmore North Division. George Lee will be remembered for his exemplary services to local government, and he was the lead campaigner for the development of the Portmore municipality. He played a critical role in the programs and projects of the Social Development Commission, twinning arrangements between the municipality and local and international development partners, as well as building partnerships with private and public entities. He was a major proponent of issues related to citizen safety and security, and he led the establishment of the Portmore Parish Safety and Security Committee. And we will now, those are the briefs. We'll now open the floor for questions. As Lincoln and I told you earlier, we have with us today Major General Stuart Saunders, and he is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, and he can answer any questions you may have in terms of the Board of Visitors for the correctional institutions for juveniles. And we have with us Deputy Financial Secretary, Mr. Wayne Jones, and we also have with us Mr. Clyde Harrison, who is the Executive Director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund. So we open the floor for questions. Darren Luton.
Good morning, Minister. Morning, members.
Yes. Project, Darren.
I can go there.
Project.
Not at all. To Mr. Jones, if I may start with you in relation to the inflation trigger, 2% above, that would be 12.5 if we get to 12.5. I'm wondering in the discussions with the workers, to what extent was the issue of the devaluation taken into consideration, and is the devaluation, now that we are seeing, in line with those discussions that you had with the workers? Let me answer that for me.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for the question. The discussions have been underway in terms of the impact of the indicators, the inflation and the devaluation in the dollars. You must recognize, though, that the trigger has not yet become current, because there is a 2% above the projected inflation rate, and therefore, as far as that is concerned, we're still watching that. As far as the deterioration in the value of the dollar is concerned, the unions and the government are also discussing any possible relief, but it has to be against the background of some empirical information that it is actually adversely affecting the workers' ability to survive. And so far, the agencies of state that watch these, the Bank of Jamaica, the Planning Institute, the Statistical Institute, the Ministry of Finance as a central ministry, are watching the numbers, but nothing has come out yet to indicate that this is that adverse in terms of its impact. The studies are still going on. But as soon as that is concluded, certainly we're going to have to talk about any amelioration.
Well,
If I may interject a little bit, the Bank of Jamaica's inflation target for the year is 8.5 to 10.5%, and I'm told that we are within the range.
we are 9.5, but we are not yet at the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
So,
yeah,
so the trigger
what
is
I have been
12.5.
told is that we are on track to maintain that.
But the fact that the discussions are taking place, it indicates that we could very well get to the point where the trigger, in terms of the agreement, comes into force. And I'm wondering, when you had the discussions with the workers, that's where I was going. When you had the discussions, to what extent did they take into consideration potential for devaluation that we are seeing now?
Well, the approach to the negotiation since 2004 is that you have a monitoring mechanism called the Public Sector Monitoring Committee. It used to be known as the MOU Monitoring Committee. And that committee meets monthly, and it's comprised of union and government representatives. And as it is deliberate in its name, monitoring. So that's what we're doing. We're monitoring, we're discussing. We won't allow anything to slip by. And so all factors are being put on the table, and the unions have been quite understanding. The government has been quite cooperative, and we expect that if there is a need for us to make any adjustment, as the agreement says, it has a dispute resolution clause in it that says, in essence, if anything goes awry, we huddle at the table once again and work to a solution, which we have done in the past.
With indulgence, I'm not being clear, it seems. When you had the discussions with the workers, which you had to sign off with on a wage freeze before you enter into an agreement with the IMF, did you say to the workers that we expect that devaluation in the value, of the Jamaican dollar will perhaps significantly erode purchasing power going forward? Was that said to them, and to what extent is this devaluation we are seeing now in line with those discussions that you had?
The terms of the tenure of the negotiation take into account economic indicators generally. Obviously, you have to be specific in terms of what some of the indicators can do to purchasing power. So obviously, when the talks are underway, these are matters that you would put at the center. But there is an appreciation and acceptance that no one indicator is going to, by itself, so adversely erode purchasing power. The inflation is probably the most cruel of the indicators, and as we have pointed out, we are on track where that is concerned. Of course, the foreign exchange behavior also is being very, very closely monitored, and the unions, more than ever, I think, are most vigilant in terms of watching the behavior of the exchange rate. And if there is an issue, I know because of the arrangement we have, through dialogue and discussions, we will resolve that.
So the workers, therefore, should not be surprised by the devaluation we are seeing now because they were told up front that we're going here. That's what I was asking.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. And we, at the bargaining table, we have no information and had no information as to where the exchange rate should be, would be, and in fact will end up. No.
An IMF agreement.
Yes, but we were bargaining for a collective labor agreement that took into account the fact that you could have movements. But again, as I indicated earlier, the tenor of the negotiation is about collective effort and understanding. You'll notice that we no longer talk about them and us in the bargaining process. We talk about partners and partnership. And that's the tenor of how we conduct the collective bargaining process today.
Abko?
Question to Mr. Jones. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Based on the tenor of discussions between Jamaica and the IMF, did you get the impression, are you of the view that the IMF is really of the view that the Jamaican dollar is overvalued?
Bear in mind, I carry the title of Deputy Financial Secretary. I am one of a number of such. My responsibility is human resource management in the Ministry of Finance. I would not be part of those IMF discussions in a direct way, and as such I couldn't provide you with a response where that is concerned.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Ask a question of Major General Saunders. In relation to the board, the composition of those new boards and so on, I'm wondering to what extent are these will this impact on the budget for the National Security Ministry? Were they taken into consideration at the outset?
That has been taken into consideration for this financial year, and there are no major changes from what used to be budgeted for in previous years.
Whoever asked to serve on the board or something?
No, I'm not saying that we're not paying. All I'm saying is that it has been taken into consideration and it has been budgeted for.
And it's not a big fee per month that the board members pay. They're paid board fee. I think it ranges between $4,000 and $7,500 a month. That's not a big figure.
What exactly hope to achieve from these boards, though, Major?
What we hope to achieve?
Yes, what exactly hope to achieve?
Well, the boards carry out a number of functions. As far as the institutions are concerned, for argument's sake, the juvenile centers. And as the Minister pointed out in her address, they are meant to address certain administrative functions within the juvenile institutions, such as nutrition, health, seeing to the proper well-being or education of the individuals that are held in those institutions, and their general care.
Just in terms of a clarification, when you were being introduced, we heard permanent secretary. Are you permanent secretary or acting permanent secretary?
Permanent secretary.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
In relation to the 360 megawatt project, how was cabinet? What were the discussions? And perhaps I know you might be venturing into territory that you cannot. So let me rephrase. There was a proposal that the cabinet should consider setting up a committee similar to the EPA to deal with this project. Can you say to the extent to which cabinet discussed and consider that proposal?
Well, what I will say is that cabinet is always open and the government is always open to having discussions with all our partners. And I know that we will have discussions with the private sector in terms of where we move from here. The OUR is handling the process, and I think we should allow the process to play out.
Is the cabinet comfortable with the way the process is playing out at this moment?
I'm not going to respond to that. Let us allow the process, Doreen.
I understand where you're going, but there is concern. And
Yes,
this is
and
perhaps
we
the biggest project we have to, apart from crime
we
fighting.
understand those concerns, but the OUR is responsible. The OUR is a body set up so that there can be no interference. And we're allowing the OUR without interference to carry out the process.
Hearing what the OUR's mandate, isn't it that the cabinet feels that it should send a clear statement to Jamaica in terms of the way this process is playing out?
Cabinet and the government will deal with that matter in due course. All right, if we have no further questions, we want to thank you for coming. We want to thank our guests for coming and sharing with us this morning, and we want to wish everyone a wonderful rest of the week.
Information Minister Sandra Faulkner has just concluded this week's press briefing here at the Office of the Prime Minister. This morning, the minister announced that the Cabinet approved amendments to the Registration Strata Titles Act. She also announced that the Cabinet approved the contracts for the lighting of the Elegant Corridor in Montego Bay between the airport and the airport roundabout and the Iberia Star Hotel. Now, the decision was made based on concerns for speeding and concerns for poor lighting along that corridor, and so they want to make it a little bit safe for commuters. Cabinet has also approved the establishment of a board of visitors for remand centers for juveniles. The board, which will be established for each remand center, will observe and assess the diet and health of the remandees. Each board must have a medical specialist or practitioner on the board, and the board will also be looking at the maintenance of each center. Cabinet has also approved the awarding of contracts of more than $689,000 for the building of interactive whiteboards for schools who are participating in e-learning projects. Now, e-learning projects were brought to the country to increase or improve the academic performance of our students in schools. The Cabinet has also approved the travel of the Minister of Youth and Culture, Minister Lisa Hanna, to the United States to participate in the United Nations Regional Cooperation for the Protection of Children from Violence. Minister Faulkner also delivered information that the Cabinet has approved an official funeral for Portmore Mayor George Lee, who died on September 29. The funeral for Mr. Lee will be at the Power of Faith Ministry in Portmore on Thursday, October 17 at 11 a.m. The mayor was serving his second stint as mayor of Portmore when he died. He was also a councillor before becoming the mayor, and of course, he was also a journalist during his lifetime. And we do send our condolences to his family and friends. And those were some of the things that she discussed here this morning. Now on to those who were in attendance to the press briefing this morning. We had Mr. Wayne Jones. He's the Deputy Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. We also had Major General Stuart Saunders, who's a Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, and Mr. Clyde Harrison, the Executive Director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund. You have been watching PBCJ, your people's station. I'm Simone Absalom. Thanks for joining us.